Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends, guys. Welcome back to r/IDontWorkHereLady, where people continue to mistake regular Joe Schmo customers as employees. And today, guys, a Karen loses it in a liquor store when she finds out that OP is a Catholic priest. Guys, I hope you enjoy the lineup of stories today. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't, and as always, your crazy Karen stories can be sent to this email right here. On this day, my friend's parents were throwing a party for high-end clients. They themselves are rich. They have a huge fancy house right on the water, floor-to-ceiling windows, indoor and outdoor swimming pools, 2 bars, hot tubs in the bedrooms, the whole shebang. They hired 2 bartenders to serve drinks from the pool bar, and we had a live band. We occasionally wandered up there to get a drink, and we would just duck behind the bar to grab drinks. So the scene. We were early to mid-20-somethings, hanging out, drinking around the bar, not really dressed up like the other guests. I'm behind the bar making myself a drink. All of a sudden, a lady in a red dress, in her mid-40s, walks in from outside and comes up to the bar. She says to me, "Hey, make me a Cosmo right now." To that I say, "Okay, sure." I then pause, realize that I don't know what goes in a Cosmo, and I say, "Oh, what goes in that again?" She then looks at me like I'm stupid, and she says, "Wow, shouldn't you know how to make that?" Now me, not following and kind of offended by how she's talking to me, say, "I know I've made them before, but they're not my drink of choice and it's been a while. Actually, I'm not even sure if they have all the ingredients down here." She then says to me, "But you should know how to make a Cosmo. Isn't that pretty basic? Like, wow, how did you even get this gig? Should I be calling your boss?" She then mumbles that I'm useless, and I was getting a bit pissy at the rapid-fire questions she was sending my way, but finally catch on, so I'm a bit testy in my response. I tell her, "I don't work here, I'm a guest, like you, I was just trying to be nice." Now here's the kicker. As soon as she heard that I was a guest like her, she had a good sense to apologize, and finally seemed to register that we were just a bunch of young people hanging out. It was like night and day how she went from condescending, demanding, to apologetic. Like I was suddenly worth normal social niceties. This is why I don't trust anyone who's mean to the help. Yeah guys, I've noticed that with reading all these stories, some people truly do treat employees like they're the scum of the earth that just aren't worthy of being in their presence. Like it's crazy how she suddenly went from "you're a useless employee" to "oh, you're just like me, let's be friends." I remember reading a comment that stuck with me. Keep an eye on people when they interact with servers. If someone's nice to you but mean to the waiter, know that they're a terrible person. True colors right there. Guys, let me know if you agree or disagree with that. Okay, so here's my story. One day after work, I stopped by the local pet superstore to get some more litter for my 2 cats. This particular location has a station where you can refill your own jugs with a store brand litter at a discount if you buy one of their containers first. I have Maine Coon mixes, so I buy in bulk when I can, and I had 3 empty jugs in my cart and a 4th in my hand that I was refilling with litter. It's at this point that I hear a woman clearing her throat. Now I do want to note that it was cold season, so a lot of people were doing that, and I became vaguely aware of an older woman getting closer to me. I just moved closer to the bin so she could pass behind me if she needed to. I finished up with my first jug and move on to the second, and this was apparently the wrong thing to do as the woman huffs at me and says, "Hey, where's the poop scoops?" To that, I stop what I'm doing and glance around, thinking that maybe she had spoken to an employee that was stocking shelves or something, but no, she's scowling right at me. It was early in the afternoon, in the middle of the week, so there weren't many employees in the store yet. I'm thinking, whatever, no big deal, I have a vague area of where things are since they remodeled the store. I take a second to glance down the aisle I'm standing next to, and I'm relieved to see litter boxes. I reflexively give her a customer service smile and gesture down the aisle. I then say to her, "They're at the end of the aisle against the wall." Now, the Karen doesn't even bother to thank me as she moves closer to the aisle and looks down it before huffing again and says, "Those ones are too small, I need a big one. Where are the big ones?" I realize at this point that she means the dog shovel scoop things. So I shrug and move on to my 3rd litter container and say, "Well, I only have cats, so I don't know where the dog stuff is right now. They just remodeled the store, you should probably ask an employee." The woman then looks at me and says, "But you are an employee, I see you here all the time." Now I should probably point out that I work in an office and I was dressed in black trousers, heels, and a green patterned blouse, with a small purse hanging off my shoulder. The employees here wear sneakers, jeans, and either a red or blue t-shirt with the company name and logo in big white letters on the front and back of the shirt. I say to her, "I have 2 large cats, they go through litter pretty fast, so I'm here almost on a weekly basis, I don't work here." She then looks at me and says, "That's a lie. You gave my dog a bath, and I've seen you on the registers." Now, it's at this point that I'm a little shocked. I had worked in the grooming salon of this particular store for a couple of months, but that was well over years ago. I say to her, "I'm sorry, I should clarify, I haven't worked for this company in years. They remodeled the store since I was an employee, so I really don't know where they moved the dog shovels to. I believe they were at the front of the store when I worked here, but that area is now where they have the dog food." It was at this point I can finally see an employee approaching, probably drawn to Karen's steadily rising voice, and point him out to Karen, who promptly stomps over to him to complain. I just finished refilling my jug, so I push my cart towards the registers, only catching part of Karen's complaints about my poor customer service before I tune the rest out. Now, the funny thing is, I would have helped her find where it was moved to if she hadn't started talking to me like I was beneath her. Just because you're old, it doesn't give you the right to toss basic manners to the dogs. Guys, I 100% agree with that, and that woman needed to hear that, but she likely wouldn't have listened anyways. But with that said, I am impressed that Karen remembered her face after years, guys. Like, I can't even remember the faces of people I just met, and she recalls an employee who used to work there years ago. Okay, so to start off, let me say that this takes place in a smallish town in a southern state in the US. This will be important later. So, I had been out doing some things for work and was heading home when I realized that I didn't have any wine and was having people over for dinner that evening. I decided to stop off at a liquor store not only to buy a few bottles of wine, but a nice bottle of whiskey as well, as I was running low. As it was a place I went to frequently, I knew most of the people who worked there, so I chatted for a moment with the cashier, who I'll call Tom, behind the counter, as there were no other customers at the time. After the conversation, I go over to where the wine was and start looking to see what was available and what I would like for the evening. I guess I'd been searching around, pulling bottles off the shelf, reading the labels and putting them back, and was so engrossed in what I was doing that I hadn't noticed that someone else had come in. Tom had yelled to me a few minutes earlier that he was going to run into the back and pull some boxes to restock the shelves, and he knew I could spend hours looking at wines just to pick the right ones, so if anyone comes in, to give him a shout. So as I was kneeling at one of the shelves, I feel a presence behind me and heard a not-so-subtle ahem. My first thought was that someone wanted to get into where I was, and being so oblivious to my surroundings, I hadn't noticed them there. Not looking up, I said, "Sorry," and moved slightly to the side, continuing to take bottles, reading the label, and putting them back. And then all of a sudden, I hear the second, much louder ahem. Now, let me explain that the store has no real dress code for their employees, except that they need to look neat. That day, I was wearing a black suit with a black shirt, not something you'd see an employee wearing here. All of a sudden, the Karen says, "I swear, I have nothing but problems with you people who work here. You never want to help. Where can I find blah blah blah?" Now, I do have to say that I've never had a problem with getting help here, so I start to tell her, "Hey, Tom's in the back, let me call him too." To which she interrupts and says, No, you are right here, you can help me right now. Or are you too lazy?" At that, I start to say, "Sorry, ma'am, but I don't work here," and start to stand up. I only got half of it out when I guess she saw my white collar. Now, I do want to note that I'm a Catholic priest, and while I usually wear normal clothes if I were to stop at the store, I had just come back from a hospital visit at the time. Anyway, the woman took one look at my white collar, stepped back, dropped the bottle she was holding, and starts stammering. I guess that seeing a preacher buying liquor made her lose her ability to reason, and she starts screaming like a banshee. I couldn't comprehend much of what she was saying, but I did catch, "How dare you, you're not allowed to drink, you are going to hell," here and there. Now, I tried to calm her down, with no such luck, and Tom must have heard the commotion and sprinted out of the back. About that time, bottles start flying, as well as a purse and some flailing arms. Rather than coming to where we were, it seems he went over to the counter and dialed 911. A few moments later, he comes over to us and tried to get between her and I, but Karen wasn't having it. At this point, I had done a pretty good job of avoiding or deflecting the arms and purse coming at me. Tom wasn't so lucky, and he was hit square in the forehead with a bottle which split him wide open. Fortunately, shortly after this happened, the police had arrived, and seeing the wild banshee making another run at me, they subdued her, taking her to the floor and restrained her. The officer that arrived, sensing he would need a bit of assistance, called for another officer, and held her down until help arrived. He also called for an ambulance for Tom, seeing that he was dazed and could see the blood running out of his head from where she clocked him. Every time he tried to ask what happened, she would start ranting again that priests have no business drinking. Nobody could get a word in or understand anything she was saying aside from that. Help arrived about 5 minutes later, and they dragged her out and put her into the police car. They had to drag her out as she wouldn't move, except to kick and spit at the officers. The paramedics, who I knew from visits to the hospital, arrived a few minutes later and treated Tom and myself. Tom ended up going to the hospital to get checked out and to get a few stitches, so the officers took his statement there, and I gave them mine at the scene. I found out later that she was the wife of some big shot lawyer in town, and he ended up getting her off on community service, and no one was able to find out why in the world she went off like that. I guess the realization that clergy are actually human beings just did her in. Everybody else ended up being fine, and Tom never stopped telling the story as long as I lived down there. This is my only I don't work here lady experience. And thank God. Okay, so that lady was definitely a little bit nutso. She sees a priest in a liquor store, immediately loses her business that a priest of all people are in a liquor store, and proceeds to scream that he's sinning by buying alcohol while she's assaulting him and an innocent employee. Are you guys shaking your heads at that? Like, what's her problem? And guys, pretty much everybody in the comments in this post is like, does Karen know that Jesus turned water into wine to keep a frickin' party going? Yeah, that woman needs to calm down. So for my job, I work as a regional sales manager for a pretty major consumer electronics manufacturer. I specifically work with a lot of national retail chains. I'll do meetings with a lot of each retailer's leadership and directors in store to discuss product sales, supply chain projections, and various other metrics. I also have in-store brand ambassadors who represent our product lineup specifically in Best Buy locations. For starters, when I go into stores, I generally wear dress clothes or something semi-formal with an identification lanyard and a book bag, just so I specifically don't get stopped a bunch of times by customers when I'm trying to complete my job. I usually don't mind helping people out in stores when I can, but I have to be pretty concise with my schedule, as I have limited time available to be in the field. On one of my most recent visits, I was meeting with one of my brand ambassadors to complete a performance assessment. When I was walking in, a middle-aged woman all of a sudden grabs my shoulder. Now I can't stand being touched, so that's a great start. The woman immediately starts asking me about some open box television and what kind of deal I could work out for her. I kindly informed her that I was a store visitor that worked with Best Buy leadership, but I didn't represent Best Buy in any way, and my brand doesn't sell TVs, so that wasn't my area of expertise. Her response was, "Oh, well now you're here, so I need you to tell me about it and figure out what I can do here." She then followed it up with a pretentiously uppity, "Also, I'm a realtor, so no funny sales tricks." That was strike two. So after reluctantly dealing with her for about 15 minutes and finally getting her to make a purchasing decision, she begins to start questioning me as why the TV displays look 10 times better in-store than her TV does at home, and why that should be illegal marketing practices. Being fed up at this point, I told her that they use a flash drive of specifically optimized videos and have TVs professionally calibrated. I also used an analogy relatable to her and said, think about it like this. As a realtor, you've sold a home that's absolutely hideous. Let's face it. I'm sure when you staged that home, you put a bunch of beautiful $5,000 couches, fancy love seats, and a mahogany coffee table in there to really sell the personality of the home. In reality, you just put lipstick on an ugly pig. It's the same thing with any kind of visual product marketing. The woman thought I was insulting her, and she ends up trying to file a complaint with the store. And the district manager informed me that they didn't have an employee named that name, so they have no idea who she talked to. I love how OP turned around and used her own profession as a kind of reverse Uno example. And judging from that woman's reaction, he probably hit the nail right on the head. Okay, so for some reason, I, a 21-year-old female, have always been confused to work at places wherever I go, since I was like 12 years old. Be it supermarkets, malls, parks, someone always comes to me thinking I work there. On this particular day, everywhere I went, people came up thinking I work there. So I work at the famous Green Apron coffee shop. Even though there's no set uniform, our dress code is typically a black shirt and some jeans. I just got off a 5 to 2 shift and I was dead tired and annoyed with customer interactions I had. Although all I wanted to do was go home and sleep, I had errands to run and planned to do shopping with my family. My first stop was to go grocery shopping with my mom as we were planning a family dinner for the weekend. I'm a shopper that goes to get what they want and need, while my mom is more of a browse around type shopper. So I was going around back and forth from the cart to different aisles to speed up the shopping process while my mom was browsing. I don't know where everything is at the supermarket, but I can read the signs and go from there. Since I kept coming back to my mom and dropping things off in the cart, this one old lady that kept looking at me assumed I worked there. Now, I would have helped her on any other day, but I didn't want to talk to anyone other than my mom. I had my headphones on. As I was talking to my mom, the old lady asked me where something is. The interaction was in Spanish, so not everything would be translated word for word. The old lady basically says, "Girl, do you know where this item is?" I just quickly turn to her and say, "Sorry, I don't work here," and continued speaking to my mom and asking what else she needed. I can't really blame the lady for thinking I worked there, given how I was asking my mom what she needed. But I wasn't wearing the green shirt and black apron the employees wear, and I had my headphones on. However, this lady was set on having me help her. I noticed the old lady watching me ever since me and my mom went inside the spice aisle, so I was able to see who she was with for her shopping. Since I didn't help her, the old lady sends her grown daughter to ask me a question. Once again, I say, "Sorry, I don't work here." I didn't process that they were family until they sent their toddler to me. The little girl walks up to me and says, "Excuse me, do you know where this is?" I was getting quickly annoyed by this family not taking a hint, but I wasn't about to snap at a poor little girl. Again, I say, "Sorry, sweetie, but I don't work here. Please tell your family to stop bothering me." I then turned to my mom, begging her to finish with her shopping. My mom looked at me disapprovingly for not helping this family, but before I can refute, I feel myself grabbed by the shoulder and turned. Now this man, who I've never seen before, angrily shouts at me and says, "Why are you only helping this woman and refusing to help my family? I even sent my 5-year-old daughter and you wouldn't help her." Now, even though all I wanted to do was scream and punch the guy for grabbing me roughly, I put on my best customer service persona to defuse the situation. I tell him, "Sir, I'm sorry that your family's confused me for someone that works here, but if you look for someone with a black apron, I'm sure they'll be glad to help you out. I'm shopping here with my mom and helping her out. Maybe if you do the same, your family wouldn't have asked me, so have a nice day." I then forcibly grab my mom in the cart and fast walk out of the aisle. I was shaking in anger and anxiety. The family probably accepted that I didn't work there because I didn't see them again while we were in line. While on the car ride back, my mom told me that that man wouldn't have screamed at me if I only helped the old lady. I looked at my mom in disbelief, but chose to ignore her and not say anything. Putting that interaction behind me, I went to the mall with my twin brother and sister. Still wearing my black shirt and having my headphones on, I went about shopping. We went inside the Disney store to buy a present for our niece. I was already done and paid for my present, so I was just looking around while my siblings were still deciding what to get. From the corner of my eye, I see this mom walking towards me, flagging me for my attention. I just look at her blankly, and then she registered that I didn't work there. Now, a simple sorry would have been fine, but she just had to put the blame of mistaking me for an employee on me. She then says to me, "It's just that you were wearing a black shirt. I thought you worked here. Maybe don't wear that so you don't confuse people." I just shrugged my shoulders and said, "I don't care." Moving to different stores and buying things I wanted, I was the first one done with my shopping. So I asked my sister for the car keys so I can drop off my things. Looking for the entrance where we came from, I was walking everywhere around this department store. This department store's uniform is black pants and a black shirt. Mind you, I have headphones on and I'm carrying multiple bags. I'm walking towards the entrance where I think we parked when two old ladies are walking in the opposite direction towards me. One in a wheelchair and the other pushing her. The Karen in the wheelchair snaps her fingers at me and starts to talk, but the one pushing her says something along the lines of, "Leave her alone, she doesn't work here." The one in the wheelchair then rudely questions, "Why would she be wearing a black shirt if she doesn't work here? She needs to do her damn job. She's wearing a black shirt." The woman then starts mumbling how useless I am, and that I'm just here to run the clock and steal money from the employer. Now, should I have ignored her comments and went on my merry way? Absolutely. Did I say things and act a bit too far? Probably. I was just so tired and so fed up of having these people speak to me so rudely and blame me for things I have no control over. I was off the clock and still had people screaming at me just because they thought I was a worker. So I snapped at this lady. So I bent down to be at the lady's eye height and say, "What am I supposed to wear then? I can't wear an effing black shirt now because you're too dense to see that I don't work here?" I've got on headphones and I'm carrying different bags from other stores. You know what? You look like you work here. You're wearing a black shirt and you don't know where things are? Call your manager over here. You're a terrible employee. The lady just looks shocked and she's gaping at me and stuttering. The other lady pushing her just looks down in embarrassment and mumbles an apology and rolls the woman away quickly. I just stand there taking deep breaths to calm myself down. Eventually I find the car and just wait for my siblings to come back. I haven't worn a black shirt since then, aside from when I work. But I still get confused as an employee. I guess I just have the look of an employee everywhere I go. Guys, OP probably looks like she knows what she's doing and exactly where she's going. And to some people, if you seem to know where you're going and look like you know how to navigate a store, you're definitely an employee. Because you know what, guys, I wear black all the time, and I can tell you I've never been mistaken as an employee, probably because I look lost and confused everywhere I go. Can't take me anywhere, I might get lost. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of our /IDontWorkHereLady. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's wonderful stories. If you did, hit that thumbs up button, subscribe if you haven't, and if you missed the last episode on the channel, OP's greedy boss refuses to let him quit. So he does what everybody does. He shuts the company down forever. Guys, go check it out if you haven't, and myself and Steve-O will see you guys in the next one. We love you.